Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sister.
Welcome back for our second day of Capstone presentations. This afternoon we'll begin with Anthony Salvatierra, and his thesis statement is, investing that contributes to the common good is necessary for a thriving working society and ultimately brings about human flourishing. Please help me welcome Anthony.
The love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. I'm sure many of you have heard this before, but there's an important distinction that must be made between money and the love of money. This verse is not saying that money is the root of all evil. It's explicitly implying that greed is the root of all evil. Christ tells us a parable to help better understand the seriousness of greed. In Luke chapter 12, verses 15 through 21, he says, "Beware and be on your guard against every form of greed, for not even when one is affluent does his life consist of his possessions." And he told them a parable saying, "The land of a rich man was very productive, and he began thinking to himself, 'What shall I do since I have no place to store my crops?' And he said, 'This is what I will do. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and I will store up all my grain and goods there. And I will say to myself, you have many goods stored up for many years to come. Relax, eat, drink, and enjoy yourself.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your soul is demanded of you. And for all that you've prepared, who will own it now?' Such is the one who stores up treasure for himself and is not rich in relation to God." As previously stated, Christ is emphasizing the seriousness of greed. The rich man is just like us. We want to build up our own kingdom and thrive in this world. Anytime we choose material goods over God, we are guilty of this. But the problem is not the rich man having an abundant harvest or many barns full of crops. The problem is that the rich man was greedy. The rich man's final cause for storing up goods was directed toward himself, and because of this he was sent to hell. And by not using his abundance to glorify God, by allowing all to thrive, his soul was demanded of him. This parable can be seen allegorical for investments. Investments must contribute to the common good and not only be for oneself. And in the same way, I'm not saying that man cannot be affluent or have a high income. I'm saying that man cannot be greedy. We must contribute to the common good, ultimately for the glory of God and the flourishing of all. Through this, man will flourish. Investing is a serious matter and should not be taken lightly. Investing that contributes to the common good is necessary for a thriving working society and ultimately brings about human flourishing. Let's imagine there is a master carpenter who works in a very underdeveloped location and struggles to make a living. He is extremely skilled at carpentry and loves his job. He owns his own workshop but cannot sell anything due to there being no demand for carpentry in the area. The town is too poor to have a real need for carpentry. The master carpenter is the father of a household and has an obligation to support his family, and he cannot because his business is failing. They are fighting hunger and struggling to survive. He is unable to flourish due to the economic hindrances. His fruitful gift and meaningful work cannot help others. He needs help, and this is where investment can truly be beneficial. Economically, Thomas Sowell defines investment as an initial sacrifice for a future reward. This is correct if the future reward is the flourishing of all, but it cannot be illuminated by greed. Centesimus Annus, paragraph 36, John Paul II defines investment as to offer people an opportunity to make good use of their labor. It is also determined by an attitude of human sympathy and trust in providence, which reveal the human quality of the person making such decisions. To break this down, let's say that one day a wealthy man is passing through this impoverished area and sees the carpenter's, and he notices the carpenter's astonishing work. There were highly valuable pieces being wasted, undervalued, and unused. To help address this issue, he decided to invest into the master carpenter. He proposed to financially pull the carpenter out of poverty, but in return receive a percentage of the future profits. The wealthy man sees how the master carpenter is struggling due to the economic hindrances, and he makes this investment because he wants what's best for the carpenter. This investment also allowed the carpenter an opportunity to make good use of his own labor. This is what John Paul II's definition looks like in reality. But he acknowledges that it has the potential to fail, and he's taking a risk. He still decides to, knowing that it will aid the common good. The compendium of the social doctrine of the church, paragraph 164 to 165, defines the common good as the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. This definition encompasses the Catholic's perspective. There is a greater good which points to the moral good. Every aspect of the social life must be related to the common good, including investments. St. Thomas expands on this and states that all actions' final cause must be directed toward the common good, in his treatise on law in the Summa Theologica. The wealthy man's investment is directly beneficial to the common good because it creates opportunity for the master carpenter to utilize his gifts and talents to bring a good or service to people. The master carpenter can now relocate himself to better accommodate for his needs. He can create a useful good or service for more people due to this relocation. Now the fruit of his work can be reaped by people who need it. This expansion also allows for his family to be fed, and him to live a financially stable life. The master carpenter's new business becomes very successful because he can now provide for the demand of carpentry in the area. His business becomes so successful that he cannot keep up everything alone. He decides to employ others and teach them his gift of carpentry. The process of expanding allows for carpentry to be even more widespread and to provide an even greater good or service for more people. The new employees can reach financial stability due to the master carpenter paying them a just wage. In Rerum Novarum, paragraph 13, Pope Leo states that the most sacred law of nature is that a father should provide food and all necessaries for those whom he has begotten. By employing others and providing an opportunity for them to make good use of their own labor, the master carpenter is allowing the employees and the common good to flourish. And this was all due to the wealthy man's one initial investment. It goes to show how investments have an umbrella effect. The initial investment that the wealthy man made led to the carpenter's success, which led to the employee's success, which led to the business's success, and ultimately to the wood community's fulfillment. In the real workforce, investment has a direct relationship with employment. As investment increases, employment increases. A study done by Tom Josh and the Gail Foster Group showed from 2009 to 2016 the relationship between investments, specifically the S&P 500, and employment. The S&P 500 is a cooperation of the top 500 largest companies. From 2009 to 2016, the national unemployment rate was cut in half. This is because these companies were able to employ millions of people through the success of their stock. Creating work for others is a very good thing. John Paul II states in Laborum Exercens, paragraph 9, that work is a good thing for man, a good thing for his humanity, because through work, man not only transforms nature, adapting it to his own needs, but he also achieves fulfillment as a human being, and indeed, in a sense, becomes more a human being. But we must keep in mind that work is for man and not man for work. All of this is pointed toward the flourishing of all. The wealthy man cares about the common good, ultimately to get to heaven. As you can see, greed brought the rich man down by hoarding all of his crops. He should have instead used his gifts and abundance that he's been blessed with to glorify God by allowing all to thrive, like the wealthy man did who invested into the carpenter. Through your abundance of fruit, you can invest in someone, and by doing this, you are stripping people of physical poverty and bringing them out. They can use their ability to aid the common good, and this is an act of charity. The rich man's path to salvation would have looked much different. We must keep in mind, these are not hindrances. The goal is to glorify God by allowing all to thrive. We must take into consideration, let's say, the master carpenter sees how large his company is getting, and he decides to monopolize vertically. He begins to own all wood services in the process of creation and can now kick out all other carpenters. Competition is crashed because the master carpenter can create the most wood for the best value by far. The master carpenter decides to strip just wage toward his employees because this way he can maximize profit. Now profit is being prioritized as a final cause in itself. And this is where things become immoral. You can see the line of morality the master carpenter just crossed. He began to place the product over the producer. The problem is not that the carpenter had a thriving business. The problem is that he became greedy. He is like the rich man from the parable Christ speaks of. And this is driven by greed, not charity. Investing is a serious matter and should not be taken lightly. Investments must contribute to the common good, with the end goal being to flourish humanity. The final cause cannot be profit for man's sake, because this man's soul will be demanded of him. This is not a hindrance, rather an opportunity for all to thrive. Investments create an umbrella effect, like demonstrated in the carpenter's scenario. But man must not cross this line of morality, or else he will end up like the rich man Christ speaks of. Investment also has an interesting nature in the sense that it goes beyond. For example, the school that we are currently attending was made possible by investors. Everything that you see in this room came from these benefactors. Through this investment, I'm able to learn these things and speak to you. They created an opportunity for students and teachers to work, like John Paul talks about. We don't just simply work, we receive intellectual and spiritual formation, with the end goal being heaven. These fruits prepare us for life and partially pave the way for our salvation. Through this investment, these benefactors could have an eternal reward, which would be forming and getting students to heaven, all through their one investment. Also, on a smaller note, the school will most likely outlive them. This just goes to show how investments go beyond. But most importantly, we must understand that investments are serious. Christ demonstrates the problem with prioritizing profit as an end in itself in his parable. Man must order his priorities. He can only serve one master, Mammon or God. Thank you.
We'll begin with faculty questions.
Mr. Alvarado.
Thank you very much, Anthony. So I'm curious to hear more about applying the common good principle with investments. For example, let's say you want to invest in a Catholic organization or any organization, but you know that they're doing unjust things, like maybe not paying a just wage, or they might be doing things that are immoral. So even though the organization might be pursuing the common good, would it be good for someone to then invest in them?
Thank you for your question. So first, I'm going to redefine the definition of the common good. So the complement of the social doctrine of the Catholic Church, paragraph 164 to 165, defines the common good as the sum total of social conditions which allow people, either as groups or individuals, to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. So first, I would say that organization is not actually promoting the common good, because it's not allowing all of its workers to reach their fulfillment more fully and more easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. So just a quick follow-up. So it would in fact be unjust for someone to invest in an organization that is doing injustice.
Okay, yes. So I can actually lay a framework for what an unethical investment would look like. So to do this, I'm going to give an example of an abortion clinic. So in the abortion clinic, the abortionists would have formal cooperation with evil. They are fully culpable for this evil action, which would be killing a child. And then their assistant would have immediate material cooperation with evil. And pretty much the assistant's actions were fully necessary for this abortion to take place. So the assistant would have immediate material cooperation, which is also evil. And then let's take the gardener who's working outside. He doesn't have the moral culpability of like the death of this child. So he has immediate material cooperation. So his action was not necessary for the evil to take place. So now flipping this onto the investment, into the investment world, it would look like a company that directly like outputs evil. So this could be like pornography industry or like Planned Parenthood. Investing in these things is 100% evil 100% of the time. And this is formal cooperation with evil. Then next, it would be a company that uses evil as a means to create their product. So like using slave labor, something like this. So this is also evil to invest in because you are helping this evil take place. But then finally, immediate material cooperation, it's a gray area because let's say this company isn't actually using evil as a means to create their product and the output isn't evil. They could still be supporting something that's evil, but like morally, it's still okay to invest in this company. It would be the same thing as giving money to a homeless man. We all have an obligation, and we should give money to this man, but we can't choose what he supports. So I think it really comes down to the subject, and I think it takes some personal discernment. And if you feel comfortable, and it is not formal cooperation or immediate material cooperation, then I think you can invest. But make sure that it's not just for profit's sake, because Christ demonstrates what could happen to you if it is. So thank you. Mr. Angrino?
Thank you, Anthony. So the person who's gardening at the abortion clinic, that's immediate cooperation, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Immediate material cooperation, yes.
So do you think that Christ would say that that person should work for that abortion clinic? Do you think that he would say that's okay?
I would say that Christ probably so I think that like in a lot of these things it comes down to like your heart, and like God will judge us by our heart. And I think that the gardener, if he has maybe this is like the only place that he can get a job or whatever, he may be in some struggle, and he really doesn't agree with like the things that are happening here, but he doesn't really have a choice. I think Christ would see that in the man, and he would not judge him off of like just because he's working for an abortion clinic, this man is like evil. I think that really like in the end, like a lot of things, you can't just blanket state that this is evil, because Christ will judge us by our hearts and our intention. So I would respond in that way.
Okay. So it would not necessarily be evil in every case, but there would have to be some restrictions that would force a person into that position.
Yes, I assume so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Gray.
Thank you for your presentation, Anthony. I was curious about if you thought about investment related to the ideals of solidarity and subsidiarity, and if there's any relationship between investment and those two ideas.
Yeah, thank you for your question. So yeah, I think that, so I can kind of spirit investment into two different like ideals. So one could be like active investment, which would look like the investment that I just talked about of the wealthy man investing into the master carpenter. Like he's this local guy, and that's a very active investment. But on the other side is a passive investment, which would be more kind of just throwing your money blindly and like investing it just to some like, I don't know, cooperation just for the means of making profit. So Christ kind of emphasizes the problem with doing the passive investment. If you're not actually trying to like create an opportunity for people to make good use of their own labor. So I think like relating to subsidiarity and solidarity, you can easily see that those kind of more along those like the active investment fits along the lines of the subsidiarity and solidarity much more than like withdrawing your money somewhere far away, because you kind of are you're helping out like these local people at a smaller level and helping them raise rather than just kind of really polarizing yourself from the work that's being happened.
Thank you.
Ms. Littell.
Thank you for your presentation, Anthony. I was wondering, do you have any personal spiritual practices that help ward off the sin of greed in the midst of these various investments or future investments that you might be making?
Thank you for your question. So yes, I think that, I guess along this whole journey, the one thing, it just keeps going back to the root. Like the last thing I said, it's like, so we're given the choice, we can either worship mammon or God in this life. And we have the decision. So, and then in all of these investments, you can be asking yourself that same question. Are we helping God by allowing others to thrive? And actually through that, it's not actually hindering you. You're allowing other people to like reach their fulfillment. So this is actually like making you more human. And it's hard to see that, but it is. So like if your mindset is kind of, you have that like disposition before you invest, I think that it really can guide you to make fruitful and like ethical investments almost every time. Because if you easily see that this is just for man's sake and due to like, I don't know, our fallen nature, it's probably not leading you in the right direction. So I would kind of just use that moral compass in the future. Mr. Baker.
Thank you, Anthony. How might an investor make, or what principles might an investor use to make a distinction between when it's appropriate to give charity, to be a benefactor, as opposed to invest in a person or a group?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So, yeah, I would say it depends on the benefactor's state of life. So like if I guess I'll give two examples. Maybe there's this kind of older man, he's very wealthy, very successful, he makes a lot of money. So like in his situation, like really he has like way too much money. I think that kind of maybe just being charitable and like helping maybe build things and like just giving money away. Like in this situation, I think that yeah, maybe charity could be like a very appropriate thing for him to do, because he kind of has, like he's very set. But maybe someone else, like I would assume the majority of people probably aren't like this man, and they still want to help people with their money, but actually through helping them, they can receive some as well, and that's kind of the investment that I'm speaking of. So I think fundamentally you have to be able to support like your family and all those people that you are responsible with. But then after you kind of have that foundation set, you can use the access to invest in people or companies, and through that investment, just as long as you're not, yeah, as long as you're not hindering your family and you're kind of like, you have this obligation to support these people. As long as you kind of always keep that in check, I think that it's wise to invest, but also you can be charitable. I think it just depends on your state of life. Starting now.
Anthony, have you looked at different portfolios that one could invest in ethically and not support any evil institutions? And then it's very difficult when even the Knights of Columbus funds are supporting companies producing abortifacients, and even a company like Apple, which is using slave labor and child labor. It seems like it's very difficult to do that, to engage in that. Is there anywhere that you could point to that we could invest in ethically?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So I really think it goes back to kind of that framework I said earlier, to kind of determine if a company is ethical or unethical. Just to kind of determine first if I can invest in this company or not. But I do know that many Catholic organizations are very open about where they invest. So I also know like the Ave Maria Fund, I'm pretty sure, is used by this school and many other Catholic organizations as like a 401k, like a retirement fund. So I think, yeah, things like that you could look at.
Thank you, Anthony.